You haven't just come right out and said anything to me, and that is, we were pretty hot on the TCL. I know what I prefer. What did you prefer?
What do you mean I haven't come right out and said anything? Are you kidding me? Stop playing coy, Robinson. You know I love this television, and I'm not happy that it's not on the wall right now either.
Well, I did see a comment you made to somebody on the video where you said it was killing you that it's currently off to the side because we've got another TV.
Oh, I know, and I'm confident that just makes me so relatable.
First world problems.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
My 100-inch is sanded off to the side,
Yeah,
so I have another really big TV. I gotta.
Yeah, we've got this crummy 85-inch that's just killing the vibes.
Yeah.
No, I really love the Sony. It's I've come a long way as far as my feelings on Sony. You know, like back when we met.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I was like a lot of you watching. I'm sure you get mesmerized by the bright blue screens and the intense saturation.
Yep.
You know, when you walk into a store like Best Buy or, you know, pick your poison. Mm-hmm. Those screens are jacked to the nines. Like, they are on steroids.
Yeah.
Because they have to wow you. They have to find a way to get you to come over, you know, and stop looking at iPhones and come look at the TVs we have to sell you. And they're set in like a commercial store mode or whatnot. And they're
like a bug zapper.
They are like a moth to a flame. The way they entice you to come over and look at the televisions.
Yeah.
Anyway, I had a Samsung when Andrew and I met.
Yep.
And I just thought that TV was awesome. And in fact, when I had gone to Best Buy to buy a new TV, one of their reps tried to convince me to buy a Sony. And I did. Got it home, and I'm like, this doesn't look good.
This doesn't pop.
Yeah. So sent it back and brought home a Samsung, and I was happy as a...
You know what?
When we met, and you're like, I'm sure probably the first thing you did was like come in and like change all the settings.
Yeah. The first time that we watched a movie at your place, I was like, wow. You have come a long way. You really have, to the point now where I think you see the standard dynamic or just artificial trickery that a lot of TVs, even the Sony, for what it's worth, do out of the box and go, like at some point, like you can't really make it much longer than a day before you're like, have you done your thing yet? Have you put it in the right mode yet? Because this looks awful.
This is true. This is true. One thing I will say is that I never had these soap opera settings turned on.
To your credit, you did not. You always turned those off and knew how to turn those off. That was not something I had to teach you.
That's right, because those are garbage.
Those are garbage.
But yeah, I really like the Sony. I think the colors are just absolutely stellar.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, off-axis viewing is really strong with this TV, especially bigger televisions.
Yeah. Because
they have so much zone, there's such a larger zone to cover with the backlighting. A lot of TVs that are very large are going to have some issues with off-axis viewing. Mm-hmm. I know our TCL
was pretty bad.
Especially in comparison.
Yeah.
It really put a spotlight on just how bad the off-axis viewing is on the TCL compared to this Sony.
And for the record, I wouldn't say the Sony is great, but it is better.
I'm really impressed that this is just your standard LED television. Mm-hmm. It is surprising that it performs this well in comparison to other mini LEDs.
Yeah.
Because I will admit, like, I'm typically pretty impressed with mini LED right out of the box. Like, I can get easily wowed by brightness just like the next person. Mm-hmm. But this, despite not being mini LED, this TV is really exceptional. I know a lot of people are really excited about Sony's new TVs that are coming.
Yep.
Yeah, Ollie M990 said this won't be, speaking about the Sony we reviewed,
Okay.
this won't be the last 98-inch model, though, which frankly you didn't say.
Yeah.
So it will be interesting to see what they do in 2025, and if they give the 98-inch the same mini LED treatment that they're bringing to the new 2024 Bravia lineup.
Yeah. And I even asked about that because I was like, hey, I know that you didn't announce a new 98 in your big showcase or whatever, but that doesn't mean like you're not going to do one like way later. And they reiterated to me like there was no imminent plan to change the 98-inch X90L at all in 2024. But I'm with you, like 2025 could be a different story. And I asked them about, well, would it be a mini LED? And they didn't comment one way or the other, but the one thing that they did kind of offer up was, as with anything they do, it's gonna come down to how controllable using their processor, their algorithm, their tech, how controllable the zones are for backlighting on such a large display. And because that's the reason they went with the LED in this instance, is it just gave them better control with what they had at the moment.
Okay. Well, this is a pretty common question that we get.
Okay.
Dominic Byers asked if you would share your settings that you used on the TV to get the best picture quality for all content, like
Yeah.
HDR, Dolby Vision, etc.
Yeah. I don't do that, and I don't recommend using other people's settings. It's great when a television from the factory meets the definition of calibrated because, and the reason why you can do it this way is all of those TVs are coming off the line and being basically set up and initialized off of the factory reference standard. Now, that doesn't mean that every TV that comes off the line is going to measure exactly the same. Every manufacturer is going to have basically a kind of a tolerance window so that if it measures based on their reference standard plus or minus a fraction or so, it's going to ship, and it'll still meet the definition like I say in this review. It'll still meet the definition of calibrated from the factory. The problem with that is that we don't know what my TV is off of reference versus, say, your TV off of reference. Maybe mine is plus 1.5% brighter over, more saturated in one area or another over absolute reference. But your sample is negative 1.5–2%, but still falls within reference. If I go and perform a full calibration on mine that's slightly over, and I correct by taking away that 1.5–2% and say a red or a blue or even a white value in some way or another, and I correct and I go negative, and then I give you my settings, but your TV was in the tolerance of negative. Now you've applied too much correction in the wrong direction, and I may have actually just knocked you out of calibration. And that's why I don't share settings.
I mean, I can speak firsthand, going back to the Sony television that I said I had bought prior to you and I meeting.
Yeah.
When I got the TV home, I was not happy with the picture. And so like a lot of our viewers, I'm confident they go to the internet and they start looking up other settings. And I even went to ratings and they will do a full breakdown on like they review so many TVs.
Yeah.
But they typically only review a 65-inch
60, yeah.
or 55 to 65
Yeah.
model. But they do provide like down to the like minutia way, like how you can change a setting or what they give you everything.
They do put settings up, yes.
They do give you everything. And what did I do? Like a lot of people, I plugged them in, and it did not help the television.
Yeah, I'm not here to judge anybody, and I get it. It can be incredibly hard to find calibrators. There may not even be any calibrators in your area, and the cost to do it yourself, depending on how deep you want to go, can cost more than the television you're calibrating. But as a thought experiment, I have on a few occasions, not recently because I'm satisfied with my results, but on a few occasions, I've plugged in several different outlets settings into the exact same model TV because we've had it, and I've measured it, and I've never ended up with their exact results. Some of them have been close. Some of them have been wildly off. Even ratings, for example. And it just goes to show you that coming out of the factory, if it's measured against their reference, whatever their tolerance is at Sony, Samsung, or whatever, they'll let it go out the door plus or minus a little bit. But if you're on one side of the equation or another side of the equation, and then you apply too much correction or you use someone else's settings who are opposite of yours, you're just asking for trouble.
So we get this question, or we saw this question several times on the recent Sony review, wondering, will a different model, meaning a smaller model, be as good? For example, at Fuzz SPL says, it looks like they offer an 85-inch in the X90L. Would you say the same feature set and custom profile setting mentioned in your review would also apply to the 85? Do you think we would see similar performance with respect to blooming, DSE, and other positive highlights that you mentioned?
When it comes to color accuracy, white point custom should translate across all Sony TVs, because that is the profile that I know based on what Sony tells me. That is the profile that they try and make as accurate to broadcast standards or standards out of the box, so you should be good. Dirty screen effect, DSE, that is going to vary literally panel to panel. You know, hobbyists will call it the panel lottery. And that, again, if it fits within tolerances, it's going to go out the door. But that isn't to say that one model is going to be, one model or even one example of one model coming off the line isn't going to be just a little bit better than the other. So I'm not going to say everything is going to be exact, but I will say that if you get the 85-inch X90L or the 75-inch and you're wanting the most accurate picture, you're going to find it with the custom setting. Blooming should be relatively similar. DSE is going to vary a little bit, but I would like to think that you're probably going to be okay.
Okay. We have a question from Chris Lukowski, who is asking about upscaling.
Yes.
Chris says, you mentioned how good the TV is at upscaling 1080p Blu-ray content. Do you first have to disable upscaling on both the disc player and the AVR for this to happen correctly? If so, do you lose your AVR's on-screen display for volume, etc.?
Okay. This is kind of two questions that are unrelated. As for if you have all of your sources plugged into an AVR and you're going just monitor out of your AVR into one of the four inputs on a Sony TV, obviously that's going to give you your OSD from your AVR on the Sony display. It really is going to be receiver dependent on what settings you have to go or go without to maintain whatever it is you want to maintain. There is not a blanket answer that I can give you as it relates to OSD. If a receiver requires certain video functions to also be on in order to display an OSD, you're just going to have to deal. Will that screw up the scaling of a TV like the Sony? I don't know. It's impossible for me to test every permutation of every receiver and every source component and every combination within a signal chain. I can tell you this much. When I am evaluating a television's scaling, processing, just anything, I connect everything directly to the television. I only do things through a receiver just to make sure that there aren't hiccups. I always go direct to the TV because, like I said, I can't possibly know every combination. So I have my players set to as native everything as possible. Like I don't have any like super resolution. I do, when possible or when the menus allow for it, I have things like scaling turned off. I have things like image enhancements turned off so that the Sony or whatever TV I'm evaluating is getting basically the most strict ones and zeros it can in order for it to do its thing.
I don't know how directly this is related, but at first Captain asks or says that they have a Hisense 75-inch mini LED TV, but they still get banding or blotchiness, OTA. I'm assuming that's over the air.
Yeah.
Is this inevitable, or is there a way to eliminate this effect? My guess it's the lack of signal quality. I was thinking it might be a scaling issue.
It's a little bit of both. Banding is compressing of a color space, and a lot of broadcast is in 8-bit. So what you need to know is, while 8-bit can look great and be amazing, if you overly compress it, you're just throwing color information away. And basically, what banding is really is you're taking, let's say we just take the color red, and we go from like a dark red to the bright red. So we're changing the luminosity. And if you pull up a RGB color thing or whatever, you'll always see like a dark, they're like black, and then dark red, 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 kind of middle red, and then it gets light, light, light into pink. Okay, so all of that needs to be turned into digital information, and it needs to be sampled and then figured out. I'm using way super lay terms, but in 8-bit, basically you're throwing away as much of the color information while still maintaining visually the smoothest gradation of color, if you will. You're doing this for all of the colors, but we're just focusing on red. Now, if you apply even more compression to an 8-bit signal, it's going to start just throwing away stuff that it needs to get down to a certain file size. And so that's when you're going to start seeing banding or the stair steppings and the lack of smooth transition across color, across shadow, across light, all of these things. So it is a combination of bit depth, compression, how much compression, what compression algorithm, and then ultimately how it's being sent out in whatever package it's being sent out to your antenna, your service, whatever it is. And sometimes things get compressed multiple times in the process. Full disclosure, this video, when I go to upload it to YouTube, will be 10, 20, 30 gigs in size. This episode would not fit on a Blu-ray disc. By the time YouTube ingests it and compresses it, it will be 2 or 3 gigs. So obviously a lot of information just got thrown away. Now, processing and scaling has developed ways to kind of go, okay, well, this is here and this is here, and yes, there's a gap, but we can surmise like what we need to put into those gaps. And so there are things inside Sony especially where it can do some sort of gradation cleanup. It can eliminate a lot of banding. I won't say that it can completely do away with it if it's just that hardcore baked in the cake, but a lot of modern TVs do have some things to kind of combat this. However, if the processing is also being taxed with, say, too many zones, or it's asking to do too much, like there's only so much computational power a TV or a processor has before it's like it has to choose its battles. And it may just go, we can't deal with that right away. And this is where the Sony argument starts to make sense, is it's like, we don't do anything with our televisions we know we can't control. Whereas other manufacturers may be, I need bright, I need contrast, and to hell with everything else. And so their processors being taxed by 30, 40,000 backlight zones or little LEDs. And they're just hanging on for dear life trying to control those, that they're not addressing these other issues. And I'm not picking on Hisense. I mean, we literally have like almost a $10,000 85-inch over here that has mad banding problems. mad banding problems, and it's supposed to have.
It's not Hisense.
It's not a Hisense, for the record. It's not a Hisense, but it has mad banding problems, and it's supposed to have a processor, according to reports, that finally rivals Sony. And I'm going to probably end up going on record, if our unit is in fact working properly, and saying, no, it does not. So it's a combination of things. Getting back to your question, it's a combination of things. It can be the signal, it can be compression, but it can also be processing. And if all three of those are kind of fighting each other, oh boy, there's nothing you can do.
Okay. We have a couple of questions about sound performance.
Yeah.
One, 3C Money, I think we can answer pretty quickly.
Okay.
Can you hook up the Sony HTA9 and test the acoustic center seek feature?
Oh, right.
Using this TV as a center channel. We don't have the original A9 anymore.
No.
So we couldn't actually test. We don't have that to test.
Yep.
But we're supposed to, I believe, get the
We're getting the new
one.
quad system, and when that arrives, obviously we'll still have the Sony. We will test that, and we will be sure to bring that to you.
And then William Hemmerly said, did you connect a Sony AVR to it? It's like, holy crap, guy.
Yes, we did.
You
yes,
literally
it's in the video.
see it in the video.
Yeah.
This person would like to hear about its eARC compatibility. How responsive is volume control and supported audio formats?
Oh, it's perfect. It's great. Like me as a person, as an individual, not as a reviewer, just seeing how Sony electronics work with themselves and other Sony electronics. If it were me and I was like, well, I know I love this television, I would totally only pair it with a Sony receiver, because I love the fact that all of the Sony receivers kind of OSD, everyday OSD stuff just gets added to the TV menu. It's brilliant.
Continuing on with Samsung, one of our regular viewers, Brian Ruby, says that he recently received a Samsung QN85D Neo QLED 4K, and his biggest complaint is the operating system of the Samsung operating system and its lack of Chromecast. Okay. Sure, Samsung has improved Tizen over the years, but I think Google TV provides a much better user experience.
I don't disagree. I mean, we have the Samsung frame in our guest bedroom, and admittedly, we don't use our guest bedroom for much, except maybe storage. But the few times that I've had to walk guests through, like, hey, it's the Samsung and this is the remote and all of that, and every time I pull up Tizen, whatever it is, I'm like, oh man, I don't like this at all. So I'm with you. I mean, I'm not the biggest, most outward fan of Google TV all of the time. Full disclosure, I'm just an Apple TV bitch, but Google would be my second choice. And being a Google household, boy, it does make things easier in the Google Home app.
I'm going to end this episode. Okay. Oh my God. I forgot to say which episode. This is the episode 8.
8, yeah. You're going to end episode 8.
Episode 8 of Unplugged with a question from @DK3393. They ask, if you were to buy a 98-inch Sony for yourself,
yes,
would you go for an LED model, or would you rather wait until Sony releases mini LED in the upcoming year or so? I'd love to buy it, but investing £7,000 in potentially outdated tech might not be the wisest decision. So far, I've purchased all of my home theater equipment based on your reviews, and I am eagerly awaiting your advice.
No pressure. Look.
Well, thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. As with anything in tech, there comes a point where you have to, as they say, go to the bathroom or get off the pot. Because if there's one thing we know to be constant, it's that tech will always improve, no matter what. So I can give you my heartfelt answer, and that is right now, even though the X90L is off to the side, it's the only TV I want to watch in our house. It's the only TV I want on our wall. And it is, and I say that knowing that we have an X95L that's also off to the side. Granted, it's an 85-inch, and that TV is amazing. But I would rather watch the the X90L, because all things considered and all things being equal, the viewing experience, while there are aspects of the 95L that I will admit are better, all things being equal, the 90L is so good and so, in my opinion, so cinematic in all of the ways that I want a display to be, that it hits me the right way, and it's the TV I want to watch. Now, if Sony comes to market with the replacement for this next year in 15 or 16 months or whatever it is, and they have updated the processor so that I get the exact same performance with mini LED, I have to leave room that, yes, my mind could change. And I know that that is really frustrating. But like I said, we have to just accept that technology is forever going to be moving on and marching forward. And so we have to all just come to our own conclusions and decisions as to, is this good enough for me now and for the foreseeable future? And I will say that for me and the foreseeable future, if you were to tell me, Andrew, you're done reviewing televisions, man, there's going to be no new ones unless, you just have a hankering to go get yet another TV. I don't believe in my heart of hearts that I would look at this television 1 year from now and be thinking the grass is greener somewhere else. That's just me. And I had a line written in the original review, and I cut it out because I thought people would think that it was too hyperbolic. But to me, Samsung and TCL TVs and Hisense to a certain degree, while excellent in their own right and even great values, they remind me of a visual experience that feels very hyper real, almost like AI or a cutscene from a video game. Very impressive, but you still know you're watching something that maybe it isn't like the real thing. The Sony X90L, and I will say the X90L more than even the X95L, which was our previous reference and still is a reference. It feels, and I'm about to throw projection people an absolute freaking bone here, but it's more theatrical. It's almost more projection.
Is it more immersive?
Well, immersion comes from viewing distance and size and all that, but it is more theatrical in how things look. It looks more organic. It looks more how my memory wants to remember cinema. And for that reason, that's why I can't stop watching it. My only gripe against the X90L is now that we've experienced the 98, if they told me we're not going with mini LED because we can't control the processing the way we want to, but we have figured out how to make this package 120 inches, here's my card. Here's my card. And because it would be such a pain in the ass to get on the wall, I'd probably be like, we ain't doing TV reviews anymore.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's funny because I was actually thinking about projection when you were talking just now. And I was going to say that if you are someone who is used to having a home theater, you're using a projection screen, and you like the way that looks to you, I think that if you ever do go with a larger television as maybe a replacement, I would start at looking at Sony first. I would also look at LG. Both LG and Sony, to me, have a more organic quality into how they render color. It's more, to me, again, more equivalent of film versus digital photography.
Yeah.
I think you will be happier if you buy something from either Sony or LG if you are coming from projection. Yeah. If you're looking for something of more value, I still highly recommend the TCL.
Oh, you can't touch it.
I mean, we get it. I know there's probably a lot of people who would love to experiment with these bigger TVs, but they are just cost prohibitive in a lot of situations. So it'll be interesting to see if and when the Sonys and the LGs and the Samsungs of the world start to come down in their price.
I think people need to be a little bit prepared for, there are going to be tiers to these televisions, and understand that tiers do not mean Like, oh, it's the Sony tax. That Sony tax is processing. That Sony tax is the performance you're getting. It is way too easy to go, well, that's a 98 and that's 98. That 98's LED and that 98's LED, and go, well, one costs $4,000 more than the other one. So that just automatically means that one brand's trying to rip you off and the other brand's being honest. That's not how this works. That's the same argument that you could make against, well, technically a Honda Civic and a Ferrari 458 are both cars with four wheels and an engine. But no one is about to say that Ferrari's ripping you off. You are getting something different. And TVs are the same way. I know it can be very easy to distill these things down to their base essentials on a piece of paper or on a spec sheet. But like I said in the Sony review, on paper, the X90L should not do the things it actually does in person. So you have to park your judgment until you can put eyes on something and then decide for yourself if it's worth it. I get it if it's already out of your price point, so it's not even worth putting eyes on it. That's fine. But there were a lot of people in the comments talking Sony tax nonsense, and it's like, until you have the two side by side, which we do, I am telling you, there's a reason one is expensive and the other one is cheap.
Okay.
I feel very strongly about this.
All righty then.
I'm actually secretly more of a video guy than I am an audiophile. Video is like really important to me.
It is. It is. Okay. Well, I think that covers everything.
Yeah, okay. I think so.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching episode 8, guys. And see you Sunday for a brand new video.
It's a big one.
It is a big one. So until next time, guys, or until Sunday, have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your Friday and have a good Saturday, and we'll see you Sunday morning.